Hello and welcome to Pobble Live for today. We're just going to give it a minute or two to see who else is joining us. So please feel free to use this time to get yourself a pencil or a pen, get yourself your Pobble book, and get ready for another exciting episode of Pobble Live. Don't forget, hello, hi, and hello. Three hello so far. Hello, 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 all three. Uh, yes, that's me, Mr. Keeling. Um, don't forget, if you haven't yet, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you are joining us live, then please give us a thumbs up. Hi there. You're eating. It depends. What are you eating? Hi, Mr. Keeling. I'm eating. Do you want some? What's for dinner? Chicken sasseur. That does sound nice. Actually, one of my family's favorite chicken sasseur. Sounds good. Yes, save me some. Sounds good. All right, we're going to give it another minute or two for other people to come online, and then we'll get started with today's session. As I mentioned, if you haven't already, please feel free to hit the like button. I do like the likes, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Also, if you have subscribed to Pobble Live and you would like reminders to come to your phone or your tablet or your Chromebook or however you're watching this video, if you press the bell icon that is, I believe, below the video, that will send notifications to your phone, to your tablet, to your Chromebook, to whatever else, so that you can go straight from that to an episode of Pobble Live. Going to give it about another 30 seconds and I'll start up and we'll see who joins in with our session. It's Gangster Granny. Yes, fantastic costume today. Well done. I was a little afraid, Gangster Granny. I have to admit, you being in my room, I was a little bit terrified, especially how serious you were being. Uh, some great costumes today. Some absolutely great costumes. In fact, I forgot to put my costume on when we started up the video. There we go, Mr. Fox. I actually think the suit itself is quite dapper. I mean, it's a shame it's not a real suit. I think it's quite nice actually. Okay, we're getting a few more people in. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Why were you scared of? I just think you were quite an intimidating gangster granny. It was quite funny. I'm a wizard. Fabulous. Good to see you all. Well done for joining us live on Pobble. Okay, let's get going, and we'll see if anybody else joins in as we go. So tonight's Pobble Live. Well done for finding it because we are on a different day. It's on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday. Next week, it will be back on Wednesday at 5 o'clock at the usual time. But again, thank you for joining on Thursday today. Pobble Live session today is all about what we've been doing at school, which is World Book Day, and we had an amazing time and we saw some amazing costumes both from children and staff, so a massive well done for costumes, some absolutely brilliant things. But today we're going to talk a little bit about World Book Day, then we're going to do some reading and writing based tasks before I give you some more ideas about what you could put into your own Pobble work. Somebody started writing already, eager to get going, so let's. What is the point? Why do we celebrate World Book Day? Can anyone tell me why? Why do we celebrate World Book Day? Is there any reason for it? What's the reasoning behind World Book Day? Why celebrate it at all? What's the point in it? Pop it in the chat if you have an answer. So people can read books. Absolutely. Yeah. So it promotes books so people can read more or read stronger, to read books and express yourself. I really like that one because the more that we read, the stronger our language becomes. So we can celebrate books. Absolutely. It's a big celebration, a celebration all over the country to celebrate books, to help people to read or to find passion for reading. And it doesn't just have to be a novel, it doesn't have to be just your traditional book. It can be anything, any kind of reading, whether you like reading on your tablet at home, or whether you like a magazine, or whether you like papers, or whether you like traditional books or comic books, or anything really that you can read is what we are celebrating on World Book Day. But really, what is the point in reading? Can anybody tell me why we read? Why is reading good for us? Can you think of something that we might get or we might gain by reading? Pop it in the chat if you think so. I've got some answers up here, but let's see. We can learn. Absolutely, we can learn. We can get facts. Time off of the screen. Absolutely. Not doing that right now because you're on the screen watching this. Educational, though. You are watching this, but it's time away from the screen. It helps our brain. Absolutely. Anything else? Yeah, reading shows that we can celebrate books, that we love books. We can read for passion. All right, I've got some on the board that I'm going to share with you now. Reasons to read. In fact, 100 reasons to read. You probably won't be able to see that because it's teeny, 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 tiny. But I'm going to see how many of these I can read to you in 1 minute. Is everyone timing me? Everyone timing me? Here we go. I'll move closer at the end so you can have a proper look. We'll see how many I can get through. I'm going to take a deep breath and we'll see. 100 reasons to read. It helps you learn new things. You can go on an adventure without leaving your home. It expands your vocabulary. You learn from someone else. It sharpens your brain. It helps you grow. It relaxes you. You could try different genres. It helps your spelling. It makes you happier. It increases your worldview. It helps you dream big. It makes you think. It helps increase emotional intelligence. It lets you learn about new people. It kills boredom. It shows you a new perspective. It challenges your perspective. It helps you improve your writing. It shows you what's possible. It helps you focus. It improves conversational skills. It inspires you. It makes you a better leader. It gives you fresh ideas. It increases your attention span. It helps you learn a new skill. It makes history easier to remember. It helps problem solving skills. It's fun. It helps spend time off of electronics. It increases your reading speed. It teaches you fun facts. It's inexpensive, doesn't cost very much. It helps you appreciate new things, to explore new places. You get to visit the library more. It encourages you to think, to travel back in time, to travel forward in time, to travel to a new world. It increases concentration. It helps with development. It develops empathy. It gives you something to do. It boosts brain power. It helps you in school. It takes you on a journey. It relieves stress. And it temporarily helps you to escape reality. That's 50. I haven't even gone through all 100 yet, but I'm going to show you here the other side of my list. The other side of my list, or at least some of the list there. Other reasons that you can read, and you can pause and have a look. And there's so many reasons to read. And it's different for different people. There are different reasons, many different reasons to read, all beneficial and helpful to us. Books are so important. Books are so important for building our imagination, for building our creativity, for helping absolutely with the imagination. And reading also helps us with our writing. I'm going to show you a quick quote. This is from a famous author. And this is a quote that I absolutely love. A reader lives 1,000 lives. The person who never reads lives only one. I love that quote. I'll just read it again for you. A reader lives 1,000 lives. The person who never reads lives only one. And what that's saying basically is a person who reads gets to experience the world through the minds and ideas of thousands and thousands of other people, other characters, other worldviews. But people who don't read, well, they can only know what's in their own mind. Now, of course, there are other ways to escape reality, like virtual reality or films and television, and that's not a bad thing. It does help us escape reality and go to these other worlds and see other viewpoints. But really, if you want to get in the side or see through the eyes of another person, a really good way is to read. Okay. With that in mind, I thought what we would do is we would read a little bit of one of my favorite books, um, The Chronicles of Narnia. As it is um, World Book Day, I thought we'd start with a little bit of reading rather than going straight into the writing. We will do writing and we will be doing a book review. And if you are interested in taking part in that book review and writing along, and you're not watching live, you could always skip to that part and do the writing and then always come back for the reading afterwards. But if you're watching live, I thought what we would do is we would just listen to a few pages of one of my favorite books since it is World Book Day. And I'm going to read The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which some of you may have already heard a little bit of before. Now, with books, as with writing, here at Causeway Green Primary School, we do things for pleasure, but with purpose. So we read for pleasure, but we do it for a reason. We read to learn new language. We learn through books, therefore we read for pleasure. It's the same for writing. We write for pleasure. We write things that we're interested in, but we do it for a purpose, for building our ability to write. Ultimately, so that in the future, we are strong writers. I'm going to read a little bit of this. But before I do, there's a little bit at the beginning before the book even starts. And I have to say, this is probably my favorite part of the whole book. It's not even the story, but this is my favorite part of this book. And it's written by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is the author of Narnia, of all the Narnia books. And while he was writing Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, he had in mind that he would share this story with his goddaughter, Lucy, who he named one of the characters after. And he wrote this message to her because by the time she could read the book with him, she was already a little bit too old for the book. Let me read it to you, and then we'll have a little chat about it. I'll put it up on the board as well, just in case, so you can see it with me. My dear Lucy, I wrote this story for you. But when I began it, I had not realized that girls grow quicker than books. As a result, you are already too old for fairy tales. And by the time it is printed and bound, you will be older still. But someday, you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. You can take it down from some upper shelf, dust it, and tell me what you think of it. I shall probably be too deaf to hear and too old to understand a word you say. But I shall still be your affectionate grandfather, C.S. Lewis. Really, really lovely paragraph there, because what it's saying is this. He wrote this book for Lucy while she was a child, but she was getting older, becoming a teenager, and therefore less likely to enjoy this book. But what Lewis goes on to say is that as you get older, when you become an adult, you discover that magic of fairy tales again. And you learn to love stories like this all over. And I can tell you it's true. It's true. There will be a day where this book might be too young for you. But then you'll rediscover it and you'll rediscover that magic that you had when you were a child. And I just think that's a really lovely statement. So I'm going to read some of this book, not much because I don't want to take up all of this session reading, because I also want to do some writing. but I do want to read a little bit with it being World Book Day. I'm going to read the first chapter of this book to you for pleasure to start with. And then for purpose afterwards, we'll talk about what we can do to add purpose to our reading at home. Okay, let's go for chapter 1. Chapter 1. Lucy looks into a wardrobe. Once there were 4 children whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. This story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids. They were sent to the house of an old professor who lived in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railway station and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife and he lived in a very large house with a housekeeper called Mrs. Macready and 3 servants. Their names were Ivy, Margaret, and Betty, but they do not come into the story much. He himself was a very old man, with white hair which grew over most of his face as well as on his head. And they liked him almost at once. But on the first evening when he came out to meet them at the front door, he was so odd looking that Lucy, who was the youngest, was a little afraid of him. And Edmund, who was the next youngest, wanted to laugh and had to keep on pretending he was blowing his nose to hide it. As soon as they had said good night to the professor and gone upstairs, on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room and they talked over it. "We've fallen on our feet, and no mistake," said Peter. "This is going to be perfectly splendid. That old chap will let us do anything we like." "I think he's an old dear," said Susan. "Oh, come off it," said Edmund, who was tired and pretending not to be tired, which always made him bad-tempered. "Don't go on talking like that." "Like what?" said Susan. "And anyway, it's time you were in bed." "Trying to talk like mother," said Edmund. "And who are you to say when I'm to go to bed?" "Go to bed yourself." "Hadn't we all better go to bed?" said Lucy. "There's sure to be a row if we're heard talking here." "No, there won't," said Peter. "I'll tell you, this is the sort of house where no one's going to mind what we do. Anyway, they won't hear us. It's about 10 minutes' walk from here down to the dining room, and any amount of stairs and passages in between." "What's that noise?" said Lucy suddenly. It was a far larger house than she had ever been in before, and the thought of all those long passages and rows of doors leading into empty rooms was beginning to make her feel a little creepy. And I understand Lucy there, because when I'm in a big place, when you're staying in a big hotel, or if you're staying in a large house, it makes me a little bit worried. Bye, thank you for stopping by. Come back if you want to join in with the writing as well. It makes me feel a little worried about what could be going on down all of those corridors. So I understand there exactly what Lucy is feeling. "It's only a bird, silly," said Edmund. "It's an owl," said Peter. "This is going to be a wonderful place for birds. I shall go to bed now, I say. Let's go and explore tomorrow. You might find anything in a place like this. Did you see those mountains as we came along? And the woods? There might be eagles, there might be stags, there'll be hawks." "Badgers," said Lucy. "Foxes," said Edmund. "Rabbits," said Susan. But when the next morning came, there was a steady rain falling, so thick that when you looked out of the window, you could see neither the mountains, nor the woods, nor even the stream in the garden. "Of course, it would be raining," said Edmund. They had just finished their breakfast with the professor and were upstairs in the room he had set apart for them, a long, low room with 2 windows looking out in one direction and 2 in another. "Do stop grumbling, Ed," said Susan. 10 to 1 it'll clear up in about an hour or so. And in the meantime, we're pretty well off. There's a wireless and lots of books. Not for me, said Peter. I'm going to explore in the house. Everyone agreed to this, and that was how the adventures began. It was the sort of house you never seemed to come to the end of, and it was full of unexpected places. The first few doors they tried led only into spare bedrooms, as everyone had expected that they would. But soon they came to a very long room full of pictures, and there they found a suit of armour. And after that was a room all hung with green, with a harp in one corner. And then they came 3 steps down and 5 steps up. And then a kind of little upstairs hall and a door that led out onto a balcony. And then a whole series of rooms that led into each other and were lined with books. Most of them very old books, and some bigger than a Bible in a church. And shortly after that, they looked into a room that was quite empty, except for one big wardrobe, the sort that has a looking glass in the door. Clarify for me, looking glass. Do we know what that word might mean? It's a very old-fashioned word. We don't really use it anymore. Can anyone tell me what a looking glass might be? Do I have the book The Twits? I do have a lot of Roald Dahl books in the classroom, including Mr. Fox. Does anybody know what a looking glass is? Pop it in the chat if you do. If you don't, just say, I don't know. Hello? No, it's not glasses, not to do with glasses. Hi, hello, I don't know. Okay, that's fine. Just pop in if you don't know. I'm not surprised I'm not getting an answer. Like I say, it's kind of older language that we don't really use anymore. But a looking glass, when we talk about a looking glass, what we refer to is a mirror. So it would be a wardrobe, and if it had a looking glass in it, it would be a wardrobe with a mirror, something that you look in, a mirror that you look in. There was nothing else in the room at all, except a dead blue bottle on the windowsill. Nothing there, said Peter, and they all trooped out again, all except Lucy. She stayed behind because she thought it would be worthwhile trying the door of the wardrobe, even though she felt almost sure it would be locked. That's inside of the room, not much there, just the wardrobe. To her surprise, it opened quite easily, and 2 mothballs dropped out. Looking into the inside, she saw several coats hanging up, mostly long fur coats. There was nothing Lucy liked so much as the smell and feel of fur. She immediately stepped into the wardrobe and got in among the coats and rubbed her face against them, leaving the door open, of course, because she knew that it is very foolish to shut oneself into any wardrobe. Soon she went further in and found that there was a second row of coats hanging up behind the first one. It was almost quite dark in there, and she kept her arms stretched out in front of her so as not to bump her face into the back of the wardrobe. She took a step further in, then 2 or 3 steps, always expecting to feel woodwork against the tips of her fingers, but she could not feel it. This must be a simply enormous wardrobe. She took a step further in, then 2 or 3 steps, always expecting to feel woodwork against the tips of her fingers, but she could not feel it. This must be a simply enormous wardrobe, thought Lucy, going still further in and pushing the soft folds of the coats aside to make room for her. Then she noticed that there was something crunching under her feet. I wonder, is that more mothballs, she thought, stooping down to feel it with her hand. But instead of feeling the hard, smooth wood of the floor of the wardrobe, she felt something soft and powdery and extremely cold. This is very odd, she said, and went on a step or 2 further. Next moment, she found that what was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough. I'm going to pause there just before she gets to Narnia, because I want to talk a little bit about why we read at home and why we read at school. So, one of the reasons as I mentioned, is to read for pleasure. And that is very, very important. It's so important to read for pleasure. But we also need to read for purpose. So, as part of our reading, the purpose is to answer questions, to predict, to summarize, and to talk about what we've read. And that shows that we've understood the story and it has left us with new memories and new thoughts in our mind. So, if I was to read more of this story, and if I was to go into chapter 2, when Lucy meets Mr. Tumnus in the wardrobe, which turns out to be Narnia, I might ask you certain questions, such as, why do you think the faun is confused? Why do you think he's asked if she was human? Because the first thing that Mr. Tumnus does is ask Lucy, when she's in the wardrobe, are you a human? Or rather, he says, are you a daughter of Eve? She's very confused at that point. Very, very confused because she doesn't know what a daughter of Eve is. But then when he clarifies it's human, she says, yes, of course I'm human. So one question I might ask if I was reading with you is why is Mr. Tumnus confused and why is he asked if she was a human? Another question later on, when Mr. Tumnus mentions strange countries, what do you think he's referring to? Well, earlier on, Lucy says, oh, I came from the spare room and the wardrobe. And he says, ah, yes, these must be strange countries indeed, when he's referring to the spare room and the wardrobe. In fact, he calls it spare room and wardrobe. Later on, Lucy decides to go with Mr. Tumnus to his house. And I might ask the question, if you were reading along with me, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea for Lucy to go along? It's important that when we read, and when we read at home, we read with somebody else from time to time so that they could ask us questions like this to support us. Other things you could ask is, what's just happened in the story? Tell me what's just happened. In fact, those of you who were with me, can you, in 1 or 2 sentences in the chat, tell me what happened in the story that I've just read? Summarize it for me. Can anyone tell me what I just read? What happened? What's going on? Can anyone sum it up in 1 sentence or 2? What's happening in this story or what's happened so far in what I've read? Give it a few seconds for the chat to catch up. If not, I'll go through the answer and then we'll have a look at some of the writing. Not sure? That's fine. Okay, if I was going to summarize what I've just read in 1 or 2 sentences, I would say 4 children, because of air raids, has moved to the countryside. And Lucy, the youngest, has discovered a magical wardrobe, seemingly never ending. Very short summary of what I've read. Let's have a look what we've got here. Lucy said that she was from wardrobe, and this is a massive wardrobe. Well, that's when I was kind of summarizing chapter 2, which we didn't get onto, but the bit I read was before that. But thank you for popping that into the chat. So kind of key things to do when you're reading at home is not just to read, but also to have someone there to read to ask questions, to sum up what you've read, and maybe even predict about what might happen next. Okay. Our task today. And if you're watching live, you can write along now. So if you've got your Pobble books with you, you can start writing right now. If you're watching this after it's live and you're no longer and I'm no longer here responding to you, what you can do is you can pause it and give yourself longer to do each of them. If you're writing along live and you need more time, at the end of the video, you can always return to certain sections and just leave yourself spaces. But our task today is we are going to write a mini book review. So a short review of a book that we have read. Okay, task then, mini book review. I want you to think about your very favorite book and your very favorite place to read it. If you have a favorite book and you have a favorite place to read that book, put it in the chat right now. We heard a lot at school today. So some people were saying that they love to go outside and read in nature. Some children were saying that they love to read. There we go. There's one, Matilda, in my bed. So absolutely, reading in bed before it can help you go to sleep. It can help calm your mind. Any other places where you might read, or your favorite story? Matilda, I mean. I knew what you meant, don't worry. Matilda, lovely. And Matilda is a great Roald Dahl book, absolutely. Any other favorite books that we have in the chat? On the sofa, relaxing on the sofa. Yeah, great place. I must admit, I do most of my reading sat on the sofa at home, although my cat will occasionally jump up on me, stand in front of the book, and just kind of be all over it because they want the attention. The Pug Who Wanted to Be a Star. I don't think I read that one. Dork Diaries. That's a great, great book. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Oh, I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I love the new movie, Wonka. And I love the really, really old movie with Gene Wilder and the songs and the fizzy lifting drink. Mr. Fox. Absolutely. Fantastic. Mr. Fox is a great book. The Twits is a great book. Lots and lots of lovely books. Okay. If you're watching live or if you're watching after this has gone live, I want you now to pick your very favorite book, the best book that you've ever read. And I would like you in your Pobble book to write the following: the name of the book. So if it's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, if it's The Pug Who Wanted to Be a Star, if it's Dork Diaries, I want you to write that. And I would like you to write book review. And if you can, underline that as a title. And the first thing I want you to do, the very first thing I want you to do is to write me a short summary of that book. I want to give you a challenge. In your Pobble book, you can write 2 to 3 sentences that explain what the whole story is about, giving the reader an overview of that book, because a book review, its purpose is to tell somebody else about a book so they can make up their mind whether or not they want to read it. So in your book, you can write 2 or 3 sentences which sum up the story. Tell me all about the story in just some short ideas. However, if you're in the chat and you're live, I'm going to give you a challenge. I want you to try and sum up a book for me in 1 sentence, and I'm going to try and guess what that book is. So, for example, I might say, the book is about a clever fox who steals from 3 farmers. Can you guess what the book is? Can anyone in the chat guess what book I'm describing in that sentence? It's about a clever fox who steals from 3 farmers. Absolutely. Fantastic, Mr. Fox. You give it a go in the chat. Can you sum up your favorite book, your favorite story in 1 sentence and see if I can guess what it is? Give it a go. And if you're watching after this, there's a comment box below the video. You can put your answer into the comment box. I'll check back on the YouTube channel and I'll see if I can guess what people have wrote in the comments. A horrid lady put worms in her pasta. A horrid lady put worms in her pasta. That's not Matilda, is it? I might not have read that one. Is that Matilda? A horrid lady put worms in her pasta. I'm not sure. Well done. Nope. Oh, can you give me more? Can you give me more clues? A giant, and it's really friendly, but people are scared. Would that be the BFG? Perhaps the big friendly giant? She married. So a horrid lady put worms in her pasta and she married. I'm still not getting it. I don't think I know that one. Try another one. What's another book that you really like? Sum it up in 1 sentence for me. I wonder if anybody... Oh, I got that one. Fabulous. The BFG. Yup, you're right. Got that one. Fabulous. Are there any others that you can sum up in 1 sentence? Okay, I'm guessing that's about the pug becoming the star, since you used the word pug and you used the word star. Any others that you can sum up in 1 sentence? That's fine. If not, add it into the comments below the video. Oh, here we go. There's a boy that made magic medicine. I'm going to go with George's Marvelous Medicine for that one. Okay, in your books, though, what I want you to do is I want you to try and write a longer summary. So try and describe the book that you've read, your favorite book, in a few sentences. Sum up the main points of the story. Pause the video now if you are not live. If you are live, I'm going to move on. We can get the next section started, and then you can always revisit and add more later. The next paragraph, I would like you to try and talk about characters. So if you're writing along, write the word characters and underline it. If you're watching this after, you can add characters and underline it. And what I would like you to do is the following, and you can answer me in the chat now and then add sentences later, or if you're not live, you can just write the answer straight into your book as a full sentence. Here are the 3 questions I want you to think about in terms of characters in your characters paragraph. This character, oh, excuse me, I've just mixed up paragraph and character. Let's separate them. This paragraph is going to be telling the reader all about the characters of the story. Who are the main characters, etc. So these are the 3 questions that I would like you to write answers to. Number 1, who are the most important characters in this book? So for example, if I was talking about The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, the most important characters in this book are the 4 children, Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Edmund. And I would write that into a full sentence. So I wouldn't write the question. I would start my sentence with the main characters or the most important characters in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe are Susan, Peter, Lucy, and Edmund, as well as the lion, who is named Aslan, and the evil Snow Queen. Ah, lovely. So somebody's put it in. Try and put them into full sentences. But the most important characters, Matilda, Bruce Lavender, Mrs. Trunchbull, love Mrs. Trunchbull, and Miss Honey. Lovely. Great. Second question that I want you to write a full sentence for, if you are watching after this is live, or maybe put them into the chat. Who is the least important? Because we talk about the main or the most important characters, but we really don't think about the least important character. So who is the least important character and why? If I was talking about Narnia, I've got lots of different characters to choose from. But if I'm thinking main characters, who would be probably the least important? I might write a sentence like this. The least important character in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the professor, because he's only really in the start of the story and at the end of the story. And actually, his character is just a device, a framing device, so that the children have somewhere to find the wardrobe, and so that the next story can be led into. Because at the end, the professor says, "Oh yes, portals open up in different places." So he's important for surrounding the book, but as a character himself, not very important. I want you to think about who are the least important characters in your story. Pause the video and write them into your Pobble book. Let's see what we've got in chat. The ensemble, because some didn't have any lines and they don't stand out. Absolutely, in some books, there's lots and lots of little characters that are described but don't really have lines. So you might say the ensemble cast, or the people that are in the background of the story, are the least important. Really good point. Thank you for sharing that. Finally, in this paragraph, I would like you to explain to me who is your favorite character and why. So in this story, my favorite character is probably Edmund. And the reason that my favorite character is Edmund is because although he's grumpy and mean at the start, he realizes the error of his ways. He changes and he becomes a hero. That is why Edmund is my favorite character. At the end of your character's paragraph, why don't you add a sentence about yours? My favorite character is because. Explain to me why. Matilda, because she's very smart. I do love Matilda. It is great. And you're right, she is very intelligent, isn't she? That's one of her superpowers. She's very, very, very smart. In fact, in the film, she answers a very, very, very complicated maths question, and that's how Mrs. Honey realizes that she's smart. So Matilda is my favorite character in this story because she is very intelligent, and I like that. Okay. Fabulous. If you need more time to write any of that in your Pobble book and you're not live with us, pause now. If you're live with us, stay. We're going to go on to the next one and you can always revisit. Here we go. Settings. So I'm going to go through the questions. At this point, what I want you to do, if you're in the chat, is just answer the questions. You can answer any of these questions. I'm going to go through them. And for each one at home in your Pobble books, after this has been live, you can pause and you can write me a sentence. So we're still focusing on your favorite book. This is still a review about your favorite book, but now we've moved on from the characters in that book to the settings. So write the title, or the subheading rather, settings, underline it, and write the answers to these questions, not the questions themselves, but the answers to the questions in full sentences. Here we go. Can you name some of the different settings from this book? So if I was talking about this, I would talk about the countryside setting where they go into the large home of the professor. I might say that one of the settings is the wardrobe itself and traveling through. And then we've got Narnia. And within Narnia, there's lots of different settings. So there's the home of the beavers. There is the castle where the Snow Queen lives. There's lots of different settings within it. Do you think the settings suit the genre? Well, this is a fantasy book. So I would say here, I believe that the setting suits this book because it is a fantasy world and a fantasy novel. So it suits well because lots of things can happen within this fantasy world. Finally, if you were to add a setting, what would it be? Well, I love space and I love space settings. So some way that the characters could get into space would be a wonderful way for me to be even more excited about my book. So answering that third one, I might say something like, if I were to add a setting to this story, I would take the characters to space at some point, which isn't unbelievable because it is a fantasy book. What about you? If you were adding a different setting to the book, what would it be? If you're in the live chat, you can just tell me what setting you would add to the book. If you are watching this afterwards, in the comments below, you could put the name of the book that you're reviewing, and you can tell me below what you would what setting you would add. Almost on the first page, third. Now I'm on the third. Okay, let's have a look what we've got. My setting will be the school. So Matilda is at the school. Absolutely. There's Matilda's home. There's the school. Miss Honey's house. Brilliant. Fabulous. What settings do you think you might add? Or anybody in the chat? Is there anyone that would add a setting to theirs? It's okay if you can't think of it now. You can take time, you can pause the video later, and you can write it in. If you are going to add it into the chat. I'm going to move on to the next slide, and we're going to look at some of the other sentences that we can build. You would add a shop, which is Tesco. Well, I mean, it certainly adds a sense of realism to it. And, I shop at Tesco. It's a very good shop. Okay, beginnings and endings. If you need time, pause the video now if you're not live and write in your book beginnings and endings and underline those two. I'm going to speed up a little bit to get through these questions now. If you're in the live chat, you can go straight into the writing and start thinking about what you're going to put in these paragraphs. People that aren't watching live, you can pause after I've said each of these questions and try and write me a sentence about it. So here we go. A little faster now. How did this book start? Think about how did it start? Where did it start? Was it fast-paced? So did it have lots of action right at the start to excite you? Or was it slower? And did the author build up the tension or build up the description to start the story? Write which your story started with, and then have a think, why might your author have done that? I know authors might use description because they want to put a picture in somebody's head. I also know that an author might use actions because it wants to interest the reader and keep them with it. So have a look in your book, reread the beginning, why not? It's your favorite book. And decide, does it start with lots of action or lots of description or a mixture of both? Who's your mummy? I need a new script. Don't worry, we'll get you a new script. That's fine. Do you like the ending of your book? Why and why not? And if you don't like the ending of your book, don't stop there. Don't just write, I don't like the ending of my book. Tell me why. But more than that and more exciting than that, why not write me what you would have done? Yeah? Maybe if you want to, you could just base it all on that. And you could write a new ending to the book that you love, but the ending that you don't love so much. But here, if you're doing the book review with us, the question is, do you like the ending? Why or why not? I like this ending because I don't like this ending because. What kind of ending did it have? Can you tell me some different types of endings? Well, I'll give you some examples of different types of ending. You can have a twist ending, and a twist ending is an ending that you're not expecting. You can have a sad ending where the main character may not win. You can have a happy ending, which a lot of children's stories do have. You can have a cliffhanger where you don't finish the story and you leave the reader wanting more. What type of ending does your story have? And related to the question before, would you change it? Audience. When a writer writes, they need to think about the person who is reading. So it's very, very important to consider who the audience for the book is. And that's what we're going to do here. Again, I'm going to zoom through these questions. If you need to pause to write, you can after this video has been live. If you're writing along, just try and get some ideas down. You can always revisit after the video's done. Audience. Who do you think this book is for? I think this book is for children and for adults because it is a fantasy story and colourfully decorated and involves children protagonists, which children enjoy. But also the comment in the beginning about adults liking fairy tales is also true. So I think this book could be for all ages. Who do you think your book's for? And can you explain why? Once you've done that, why do you think it's for that particular audience? Is what I've already said. So why do you think it's for that audience? Is there anyone who would not like this story? Well, this is an adventure story, a fantasy story, and a children's book. Somebody that doesn't particularly enjoy fantasy or children's stories probably shouldn't read this book. What about yours? Who shouldn't read your book? Finally, in the book review, you can write the heading opinion and underline that. I think the audience is for all ages starting at 6 years old. That's wonderful and that's a great start. Well done. Now, can you add to that and explain, based on that second question, why you think it's for all ages? What is it about that book that everybody can love? And I think if we're still talking about Matilda here, you're absolutely right that adults I know love that story. Why? What's so good about that story? Why are Roald Dahl's books so good or so enjoyed by adults and children? Why do you think that is? If you've got opinion underlined, great. If you need more time, just pause the video if you're not live. Here are the questions that we're going to go through so that you can write me sentences about your opinion of your book. Number one, what did you think of this book overall? So I would like your view of the book in its entirety. And you can do that by adding in the second question, what would you rate this book out of 10? I thought The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe was an excellent book full of action and adventure. However, I would have liked the language to be a little more challenging. Therefore, I give this book an 8 out of 10. You think that Matilda is for 6 years old or beyond because it's funny and interesting to read. I agree. I agree with the first half of that sentiment that actually, by making a book funny, you appeal to a wide audience. Absolutely. And you rate it 9 out of 10, maybe because it's funny as well. Yeah, really good. Okay. What is the best part of the story? So once you have told me overall what you think of this book, and once you've told me what you rate this book out of 10, finish off by saying, my favorite part of this story is, tell me what it is and explain why. So my favorite part of the Chronicles of Narnia is when Aslan comes back, because there's a really sad part where we think Aslan is not coming back. When he does, it makes me feel really warm and really happy. I'm really excited to see him because I know that the children are probably going to win. What's your favorite part of the book? And can you explain why? And with that, and all those paragraphs that we've built up with those questions, and if you need to go back, you can, you should have your mini book review. And I would love it if you've joined in Pobble Live today. Please ask your teacher to come and see me, to share it with me. I would love some examples. And do you know what? I would love to read some examples on Pobble Live next week. So if you have some good examples of book reviews or some other Pobble Lives that you've written along, and they're really good examples of you joining in, I would love to share them with our Pobble Live audience. If I am your teacher, then just bring it to me. I'll read it and I'll choose some examples from that as well. Okay, lovely. Just to finish off, and just to give you other ideas, in case you want to do something a little bit different to the book review that we just did, here are some extra Pobble ideas that you could do for World Book Day, or for World Book for the World Book Day focus of our Pobble. You could create a poster detailing all the reasons you should read. And again, if you create a poster and it's got lots of reasons to read, and you've got 100 reasons to read because I read them out earlier, if you surround it by really good reasons to read, we might show some of those on Pobble Live next week. So please bring posters in school, bring them to me. And some of the very best will get some gem cards and will feature on Pobble Live. Pause the video now and search this link here. I'll just hold it there. You can pause and you can use this link. That link will take you to a YouTube video that I use with my children today that shows you how to make your own 8-page book using just a piece of paper and a pair of scissors. Why not write your own mini story and bring that into school so that I can see that? Maybe we can read some of those on Pobble Live too. Write a recount of the fun things that you did at school today. So think of everything you did at school today and come up with a recount, a retelling of your day. What did you do? And add in those time conjunctions that can structure it, like first of all, next, then, finally, after that, etc. You could write a poem all about the many reasons to read. And finally, don't forget to use what you will have been given today, which is your book voucher. It's either £1 off of a book, or you can take it to, I'm not sure exactly on the shops. I know WH Smiths do it, and a lot of them are online for you to look at, but you can take it to the shop and you can exchange it directly for a book. So that, as Mrs. Jones says, you can read your way. And I would love to hear what some of you think of these book day vouchers. And if you didn't get a book day voucher today, we'll make sure that you absolutely get one tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining Pobble Live again this week. I will see you at the regular time next week, which will be Wednesday at 5. Don't forget to press the bell. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to join us next time. We'll see you then. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining in.